Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
All right. This is gonna be a good. This is a good opportunity to really explore something that I think a lot of us have, which is this dualistic aspect of God. And so, at the end of the last episode, we have this nation that's been delivered from another nation, and in being delivered, it was dramatic, right? It was a suddenly it was this wealth of fear that had welled up within them. They were trapped, then they were protected, and then they were a way came from where there was no way, which much like Jesus has teaches us. Moses goes to God, he's like, what are you going to do? And he's like, what do you want to do? Like, basically just find a way out, just like I got your back. Spread your put your rod out over the top of the sea, we'll split it wide open, whatever you want to do. And so he did, and everybody left. Everybody was released. It was awesome. It was awesome. It was awesome. So they get done, and I know it causes angst in a lot of people, but I believe Moses had the choice to do what he wanted to do with the Egyptian army. God had an opportunity for the Egyptian army to disappear. Moses chose to kill them. Boom. There they are. And there they, and now they can see them floating, which again, I just wanted you to explore it, because for me, it's just one of those things where you have to wonder what was going on. Why did drowned bodies float? And then, like, you just have that weird moment, like, well, wait, did God do like a mercy killing? Did he kill them before they drowned so that they wouldn't go through the suffering? But God doesn't kill. Like, I don't know. It's, for me, it's a mystery. It's a mystery, because I don't think God killed them. Because I don't think God has death in heaven as a weapon to use. So I don't know. But when all that happens, there's great celebration on the other side of the seashore. There's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of celebrating people. They are cheering, they are drinking. I have no idea what, but they're drinking, they're eating, they're high-fiving, they're hugging, they're celebrating. The tambourines are out. Somebody got out a drum. They started a rhythm, and basically they came up with, Moses comes up with a rap song, or a psalm, I should say, a psalm of victory. And it is a pretty awesome psalm. I think that many pastors have used it as a way to encourage people that victory comes from God, and that the enemies of God will be defeated. And yes, that's absolutely true. But I don't think it's because God's out there killing them. I think it's because that's the natural result of you reap what you sow. And if you reap with the father of lies and death, you're going to end up with lies and death. So the dualistic, mind of the Hebrews is seen, and I think they're a lot like us, but it's seen in the words to the song. They see God as both good and bad, as both killer and life giver, as both master to keep happy and what's the other side of master keep happy? Oh, and master who could get mad, who could get angry. I got in the middle of that sentence and couldn't get out of it. Bob, sit down at your desk and keep an eye on me. Stop all this, whatever it is you do in there, and help me out. Don't leave me in the middle of a sentence without somewhere to go. I'm doing a podcast here. I can't be seen as somebody who didn't know what he was going to say. That's right. Yes, I know. A Michael Scott moment, right? Sometimes I just start saying words. I don't know what I'm really saying. Yeah, classic. That was it. The Office was a funny show. All right. At least I thought so. Yeah. If you keep God happy, right, then you are loved. If you keep him real happy, then you are blessed. If you keep him super happy, he'll kill your enemies. That's kind of the way that people approach God, right? We'll get into that a little bit more. Any form of unhappiness, and you have no idea what he could do, which is the classic tyranny of a dictator and a man. You just don't know. The master could decide to show you mercy, and even though he's not happy with you, well, you can still eat and drink and have a warm house to live in. But he may also decide that you deserve to die, or somewhere in between. You may end up with a cold or a really bad infection on a hangnail or cancer. Just don't make me unhappy, because if I tell you what I'm going to do, then you may calculate just how unhappy you can make me before things will get so bad that you don't want to make me unhappy anymore. But, being the good God that I am, I may be good to you through several years of you being really bad. And then I'll crush you like a grape, because I can't let you know what I'm going to do, because I'm a good dictator and master. It's crazy. Or he could, thank you, Bob. Or he could let your enemies come in and wipe you out and just take out your whole nation. So if your nation maybe you're doing fine, but then your nation is doing something else, and the leaders of your nation lead you down a different path, well, then I may bring in the enemies, and they're going to wipe out all your wealth and your family, and bring you into slavery, and you might not have done anything wrong. So it's too bad for you. It's just the way I operate, and that's the way a lot of people look at it. A lot of people look at it that way. It's just so we treat God just the same. It's a slave mentality, and we praise him like crazy when our enemies are destroyed, or even people we disagree with. If bad things happen to them, it's like, oh, that's great. Or maybe they lose their livelihood. It's like, oh, well, that's fine. Well, they deserve that, right? They didn't agree with me when it came to my eschatology, or they didn't agree with my political beliefs, or they didn't agree with my belief, my whatever. Like, literally, my brain just exploded with illustrations. That's where the stuttering came from. It just exploded. There's so many illustrations. You can scroll a Facebook feed, and you can see lots of opportunities for people to disagree, and lots of places where they do. And what's crazy to me, so many times, people post things that are, shall we say, a little controversial, and I scroll their feed, and I don't agree with what they posted, but I scroll their feed and everybody's agreeing with them, and I think, wow, they have no diversity of friends. None. And that happens for a lot of people. Liberal, conservatives, independents, every form of denomination. Sometimes, that you post stuff or you present stuff in such a way that you ultimately just surround yourself with people who agree with you, and you literally have no critical thought after that, because everything you say is, good point, brother, good job, yeah, oh, I agree, and you think, yeah, the world agrees with me because I'm awesome, rather than, maybe I should do a little bit more research. Maybe this guy does have a point. Maybe there's more than one way to accomplish the end goal. And without that critical thought, you just end up droning over and over and over again the same plot points. And then when people do actually disagree with you, live and in person, or have a point that you actually should consider, you just panic and call them names. Well, you're just an idiot. You're just a conspiracy theorist. You just don't believe science. You just don't believe the Bible. I'm not talking to you. And you walk away. You can't open your brain up a little bit. You can't evaluate yourself and where you were coming from a little bit to maybe say that there might be another stream of information that should at least be considered, if not long term implemented. Now, I don't. Sorry. Side note. I just realized that I was recording with the heater on. It's very cold where we are, and so I had a little space heater going on in the bedroom where I do the recording, and that may have been in the background for the last 10 minutes and 38 seconds. So, to my producer Brian, I'm sorry about that, and I will try to make note of it so that you don't go crazy when you're listening to it and EQing everything, going, "What is that noise? What is that noise?" It's a space heater. I shut it off. I'm sure I won't get that cold over the next half hour. So we should be fine. If that little noise was in the background of your ear pods and you were thinking something's wrong, it was wrong, but I fixed it. Bob, once again, this goes to you. You were distracted doing whatever it is you do in that little office of yours, and you should have been like, "Bob, the heater's on." So we'll blame that on the other Bob, the one that lives in my head. So anyways, we like it when bad things happen to people that we don't agree with or people that we consider our enemies. And that's because of our dualistic mindset regarding God. We think we say it, right? Well, God's in control. God's in control. And when bad stuff happens to our enemies, we're like, yes. And we sing songs like this that Moses sang and the Israelites sang. And well, I'll read the whole thing in a minute, but I just wanted to spend a little bit more time on this because as you know, I touch on it in many places, but for me, this is just a blatant explanation of people who have a dualistic mindset regarding God. We see both sides in this song. They remember, God was out there killing their enemies, calling down the water. It's like, wait a minute, who called down the water? That was Moses. I mean, he took credit for it in the last chapter. Here he gives God credit for it. Like, it's just bizarre. It's just bizarre. But we have to be careful of that. We do, because we do the same. We just do the same. And I remember growing up. I grew up in a, do I tell people? I grew up in for me, a very, very conservative theology. Protestant, ultra-conservative theology. And I currently would be I consider myself still a Protestant, but in a very progressive theological mindset where Jesus is perfect theology. That's my theology, is Jesus. So people who knew me back in the day would probably call me a heretic in many things, because we do not agree anymore on so many things that not only I was taught, but stuff I preached. Because I was taught through high school in a very conservative approach to the Bible, literal. I was a literalist when it came to the Bible, and man, I studied in high school apologetics. That was my elective course. I loved it, defending the faith, and I could do it, but I look back and so much of it was had this dualistic mindset. It was God is both good and evil. And whatever he does is evil. It only looks evil to you and I because we're sinners, and we won't we won't have true perspective till we get to heaven. Even though Christ saved us, even though the old man is dead, even though we have the mind of Christ, even though we have the righteousness of God, even though all that's, quote, true, we spiritualize it all. We put it all up in heaven, and we say, well, we'll get all that when we get there. Right now, we're just sinners saved by grace. And as you know, if you listen to season 2, all I keep trying to constantly go to, we are saved back to the beginning. We're saved back to our original purpose, our original design. not back to where we sinned. That's not, God doesn't save us to chapter 3. He saves us all the way back to chapter 1. So I don't believe God's dualistic. I don't. But let's get around to, let's read this chapter pretty much, all right? Because I do think there are some amazing words of encouragement in it. And I think we should sing it. So then Moses and the Israelites sang the song to the Lord. I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted, both horse and driver. He has hurled into the sea. Here we go. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God. I will praise him. My father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his armies he has hurled into the sea. The best of Pharaoh's officers are drowned in the Red Sea, or Reed Sea, which is, again, we talked about last episode, but anyways. The deep waters have covered them. They sank to the depths like a stone, which is tough to do if you're in the Reed Sea and not in the deep sea, but let's move on. Your right hand, Lord, it was majestic in power. Your right hand, Lord, shattered the enemy. In the greatness of your majesty, you threw down those who opposed you. You unleashed your burning anger. It consumed them like stubble. By the blast of your nostrils, the water piled up. The surge of waters stood up like a wall. Deep waters congealed at the heart of the sea. The enemy boasted, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoils, I will gorge myself on them, I will draw my sword, and my hand will destroy them. But you blew with your breath, and the sea covered them. They sank like lead in mighty waters. Who among the gods is like you, Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in glory, working in wonders? You stretched out your hand, and the earth swallows up your enemies. In your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. The nations will hear and tremble in anguish, will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized and trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them by the power of your arm. They will be as still as stone until your people pass by, Lord, until your people you brought pass by. You will bring them in and plant them in the mountains of your inheritance, the place the Lord you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, your hands established. The Lord reigns forever and ever. When Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and horsemen went into the sea, the Lord brought the waters of the sea back over them, but the Israelites walked through the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam, the prophet, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her with timbrels, dancing, and they sang, Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted, both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. Woo! Doggy, that's a top 10 hit right there. And it has been, really. At some level, people have sung this song for thousands of years because they see something bad happen to someone they don't agree with, and they just assume God is on their side, and anybody that God's for, who can be against? For he will crush the enemy. He will cover them with the waters of the deep. Everybody dies when God's against you. I mean, that's a it's a fascinating thought to think that so many believe in a God that has that much darkness in him. Because if darkness comes from God, then there is darkness in God. And you can't have that. God describes himself as all good. And for those who got it wrong, he sent his son to earth so that you could see exactly what his character was like, and there was no darkness in Jesus. There was no dualistic Jesus. There were no stories of Jesus growing up, those those years that we don't know about. There's no stories of him, running off killing people. And then God calls him to ministry and now everything's good. For the last 3 years he did everything right. No. The stories are all consistent that he was good all the time, because that's the nature of God. And he was the perfect image of God on earth. And he said, you have that same image in you. But because we have a dualistic mindset of God, we also have this dualistic mindset of us. And we say, I am also evil. I am also in a tight spot. I am also in a place where I sin all the time. And we find evidence for that, right, in our own lives. We look and we say, well, I thought bad thoughts, I did bad things, I lied, I cheated, I stole. Clearly, I have character flaws. Clearly, I have sin in my very nature. Clearly, I'm not the image of God on earth. So therefore, I'm both. Yes, I have Jesus in my life, but until I trudge through this entire world, my time on this planet, I beat myself into submission over and over again. I beg and I plead for God's mercy because I don't deserve to really be alive. I'm a worm. I am less than a worm. I beg for crumbs at his table. Like there's all this stuff that we approach God because we see ourselves dualistically, and then we filter God that same way, and we look and we find the evidence of it. Because if we look at this, right, Moses gives God credit for bringing down the water, and yet in the story, God's like, if you spread your staff out, I mean, you split the water, you draw it back down. If you do, it'll kill everybody. And Moses is like, I like that plan. And he kills everybody. And look at the way that Moses immediately transfers that kind of death and destruction onto the inhabitants of the promised land. Remember, God has never spoken to Abraham, Isaac, or to Moses about killing everybody in Canaan. He talks about overtaking them and doing so through massive population and influence of Yahweh through that population into their cultures, so much so that their cultures are wiped out. That's the approach that God has. But here Moses transfers the idea of overtaking the promised land into overthrowing it through violence, and he gives God credit for all of this. The nations will hear and tremble, in anguish will grip the people of Philistia. The chiefs of Edom will be terrified. The leaders of Moab will be seized with trembling. The people of Canaan will melt away in terror and dread. I mean, this is crazy. They will become still as stone. Yeah, that's dead. That's when you become still as stone, is when you're dead. He transfers this mindset to the people. Now remember, he's singing this to the people. He's teaching them a new song. And at the end of this song, the women take a chorus of the song. That this is the way that Hebrews would memorize things. And this goes right all the way to the story of the cross. You would memorize the whole psalm, and then you'd come up with a phrase that would remind you of everything the song was about. So when Jesus is on the cross and he says, my God, you have forsaken me, he was giving the Jewish people the first round of memory regarding the psalm that comes from, which I believe is Psalm 21. And by the end of that psalm, David is declaring, but you haven't ever left me, and you are right here with me, and you are closer than my breath. Like it's a beautiful reminder that we may look at our circumstances and think to ourselves, God has abandoned me, and we may even feel like God has abandoned us. But the truth is, he has never abandoned us, and that's exactly what Jesus was saying to everybody. You look up here and think God has abandoned me, you couldn't be more wrong. He is so close to me now, he is literally in my breath. It's a beautiful psalm that Jesus is reminding people God is not dualistic. He's always with us. And you could look up here and say, see, God has abandoned his only son. Nope. Not even close to the truth. Not even close to the truth. And it's not close to the truth here either. God is not going to abandon his people. God is not. No matter, even if they choose wrongly, he doesn't abandon them. He's constantly going to be with them. And Moses here is singing a song about how evil God is and how he's going to terrify the world and take over the planet. And it's like, well, maybe you weren't listening. Or maybe you're seeing evidence and you're filtering that evidence through a faulty vision and understanding of who God is. You're filtering that evidence in a way that makes God looks like something he's not. So when Moses and the people are looking at what just happened, they see a God who destroyed the Egyptians because he loved Israelites more. The Israelites had suffered and needed to be paid back reparations, and this was how they were paid back. God killed their enemies, wiped out the men, women, and children, wiped out the army, and in essence wiped out the nation because he loves the Israelites more than he loves the Egyptians. And that's not who God is. But that is the way we present him, and that's exactly the way that Moses presented him. He talks about God's, description of power and goodness, and then he just has these terrible ideas about God's power and character. In verse 16 of this thing, it says, right, terror and dread will fall on them. I just finished that part about Canaan will melt away. By the power of your arm, they will be still as stone until your people pass by, Lord, until the people you bought pass by. Now, some you can translate that word bought as created, but it carries that nuance that this is something like you own us. You created us. We are your creation. We are lesser than you, and we are controlled by you. We are owned by you. You are, the reason for our life comes from you. They see themselves as being purchased by God through the deliverance from the Egyptians. They were delivered out of slavery. They were delivered from the army, and therefore they now are owned by God. That's where their mindset's coming from. Our new master is so powerful that he killed off our old master. And that's the kind of expectation that they have on God. They set the expectation that God will kill off any and all who are living who oppose them. And from their perspective, everyone and anyone living in the promised land is now an enemy who God is going to crush. And they immediately believe, well, maybe it took 3, 4, 10 minutes. They just start to process, okay, if God's going to crush them all, we get to be a part of that. We get to crush them all. They set this expectation. Again, this is not God's plan. This is Moses assuming that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob didn't understand the way that the promised land was going to be taken. They clearly had questions and had asked God, how is the promise? How are we going to know? How is this going to happen? And God said, trust me, follow my plan. It will happen because I am a loving God and a good God, an amazing God. And when you overtake these nations, it'll be like heaven overtaking earth. And Moses is basically saying they didn't understand, but we now know. Because from our dualistic perspective of God, we have seen what God does to people who disagree with him. And everyone who lives in Canaan clearly disagrees with God. And so this is what's going to happen to them. Now, why does God not correct this view? Why doesn't he step in and say, whoa, 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 there, Mr. Lyricist, Mr. New Rap King, let's work on some of the wording of this song so that you understand my plan and you understand my character a little bit better. And I think in a lot of ways he does. He tries. But the people look at look at their circumstances, and they filter it in such a way that they find the evidence to support their beliefs, which is the same thing that we do. We catch a cold and we say, "Oh, the devil's on me." God is letting the devil attack me. I don't know what I did, but I'm going to be homesick with COVID or the cold or the flu or variant 47 FB dash whatever. Like it's or we sprain our ankle. We're playing sports and we sprain our ankle, and it's like, oh God, what did I do wrong? Like we were on our way to becoming whatever, and now I've got a sprained ankle. So clearly God is out to get me. He's here to teach me something. And what happens is God's goodness does teach you something, because he doesn't waste anything in your life. He's always looking to give you promotion, to expand your faith, to expand your strength, to expand your ability to get heavenly perspectives on all your circumstances. And when that occurs, we unfortunately often make the connection, oh, clearly then God caused the bad in order for the good. He can't do that. We've been over that at least 1,000 times, and probably 1,000 times more. He can't. If he can, then he is both evil and good. And man, that just really changes everything, I think, when it comes to faith. If he's evil and good, then what can you trust? Because now you just don't know. Was he being evil, or is he setting us up so that he can be good? It's not a healthy place to be, but so many of us live there because we just look for the evidence to support our beliefs. And then the women, they teach the people this little chorus with a tambourine and probably a good rhythm, and they could start singing this chorus all throughout the land, and everybody would know the rest of the words of the song, and they would hum it all day long. Right? So all this is going on. They're having a great time. I'm guessing if all is according to legend, right? They saw the Egyptians coming. Reports of the Egyptians coming happened in the morning. The cloud goes behind them to protect them in the late afternoon. Sun sets, the wind blows, the sea parts. They spend the night crossing the Red Sea, which again is described beautifully in the song. The way that the walls went up and the gel and the it just was spectacular, right? It's beautiful. And then they get done, they get on the other side, the sun comes up, the cloud lifts. And in so many ways, I think that the Lord constantly was trying to let Pharaoh make a better choice. I think he warned Pharaoh. He blocked Pharaoh's entrance. Clearly he had tons of warning before he even left the country. But then when he chased them down, the Lord warns them with blocking them all night. Like, why didn't Pharaoh just say, you know what, guys, we've been up against this God before. We've lost every time. Our gods they just don't protect us. And this God is clearly a God of protection. Why don't we go back? And why don't we worship this God? Or why don't we just lay down our weapons, and in the morning, I'll send an emissary over to Moses, and we can kind of introduce ourselves again, kind of start all over. Like, he had opportunity. He had plenty of opportunity. And even when they were headed that way, right? God leans out of the cloud and he scares the horses and causes everybody to break ranks, and the chariots start bumping into each other. The wheels are falling off. He's like, basically, turn around, get back. I don't want you to die. And then Moses is like, this is a perfect opportunity for everybody to die. I'm going to take them out. Anyways. So I think that God did try to change the way people viewed him. They just didn't see it that way. So in verse 22, it says that he led Israel away from the Red Sea, and they went into the desert of Shur. 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 You say it however you'd like. For 3 days they traveled in the desert without finding water. When they came to Moriah, they could not drink its water because it was bitter. That is why the place is called Moriah. Means bitter. So the people grumbled against Moses. What are we supposed to drink, Moses? What's going to happen, dude? And again, this goes right back to that slave mentality. As soon as a slave has something bad in their life happen, they immediately go to the master because they take no responsibility for anything that's going on. They're just servants. I'm just a servant. Everything that happens to me, and it comes from the master. So anything good happens, it happens from the master. Anything bad happens, it's because woe is me, I'm a terrible person, a horrible slave, and the master is mad at me. So they go to Moses and they're like, what are we supposed to drink? We spent 3 days, like all the jugs are empty. The water supply is gone. Like our animals are going to die. Our people are going to die. Our children are going to die. My bird is going to die. We're all going to die. My grandmother's dying of thirst. We're all dying. We're all dying. Moses, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? They grumbled. I'm telling you, grumbling people are no fun. Verse 25, Moses cried out to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. He threw it in the water, and the water became fit to drink. Wait, what? That's a great plan. Moses goes to the Lord, and he gets a simple and yet ridiculous solution. What is God trying to show him here? I think he's trying to say, listen, you don't have to work hard for this. Right? God is trying to say, listen, I'm a God of love and joy and hope. And you guys keep turning this into you keep wanting me to send you rules to obey. I don't do that. I think God's saying, listen, my favor is not a thing of hard labor. You just if you want to do something, do something. I'm not going to put those kind of rules on you. And Moses is like, what am I supposed to do? And God's thinking, I don't know. Make the water sweet. I don't think we have any clue sometimes the kind of power and authority God's given us. I mean, think about all the things that Moses has seen happen when he's stretched out his rod over something, or thrown his rod down, or hit the ground. I mean, there's so much power that Moses has, and he still doesn't quite get it. He's still fighting. He's still fighting his past and his training regarding gods and leadership. He goes to Yahweh and he says, what am I supposed to do? And God's like, throw that stick in. Whatever you want. My burden is easy. It's light. Do what you want. You're going to hear me come up behind you and say, yes, I'll back you on this. So he throws a stick in, and then the water becomes sweet. Like the people should be, this is what they should have wrote a song about. This is what they should be praising the God about. This is where the women should have a tambourine and everybody should be dancing. You throw a stick in the water and it becomes sweet. We literally will never find a water source that we can't drink before or can't drink again. We could live alongside the ocean. I mean, watch this, right, people? We could live alongside the ocean, and all we have to do is throw a stick in the water and we can drink it. This is what God is showing them. This is the kind of connection to the frequency of creation that God wants his people to have in order to bring heaven to earth. This is the kind of incredible shifting that he wants his people to be able to do and experience And Moses is still going to God saying, I don't know what to do. And then Moses comes up with this. He goes, there's a new rule, right? Exactly. This is exactly what we do. Every time God tells us something to do, we turn it into a rule. He said, this is instruction. This is going to put you to a test. Like a good master, I'm going to test you all the time. If you listen carefully, again, right? All the nuances of behavioral modification here. And you do what's right in God's eyes. If you pay attention, I will not do to you what I did to the Egyptians, for I'm the Lord who heals you. I'm the good God, and I won't kill you, but you better obey me. I know that this is the way they saw God. I understand why Moses wrote it. I just know it's not like Jesus, so it can't be the way God meant it. Then they came to Elim, where there was 12 springs and 70 palm trees, and they camped there near the water. So they all had a good long drink and spent the night, and then they kept walking. They followed the cloud, and they come to this beautiful oasis, and rest. Rest is how you take the promised land. Rest is how you obtain what God has promised you. You don't do it through striving and killing and wiping out things. You don't do it through praying for the destruction of your enemies. You do it through rest. And that's how you should see God. You should see him as a God who brings rest, joy, peace, hope, dancing, celebrations, worship. This is the God that you serve. He's like, this is the God. This is how I do things. You're going to overtake the promised land. I'm going to take you to an oasis, and there you're going to rest. Because that's what I do. We are in no hurry to make this happen because it's literally already happening. Like, you don't have to worry about a thing. You don't have to worry about a thing. Just go and rest. Small example. There was a business, a building for sale right at the end of my little neighborhood. And it got bought, and the guy who bought it owned two types of stores. He owned a kitchen, gourmet supply stores, and he owned porn shops. Adult entertainment and something stores or something like that. Anyways, I forget what it was, but it was not something I would want literally 50 yards from my house, right? And I know that there were many Christians who went there and prayed for his death and destruction. They wanted his family to feel the pain of bringing such disastrous, horrible, a plight and blight to the earth through pornography and all that sort. All that I don't need to run down that road, but it was bad, right? And I was struggling with this, not struggling, but I was like, Lord, I need your perspective. I need your perspective. So what I did was I prayed for blessings on his family. I prayed that they would encounter the Lord, that they would come to know him as Savior. I prayed that his gourmet kitchen business would become so profitable that it would make perfect sense to put the gourmet kitchen business in this empty store. That as a businessman, he wouldn't say, well, I need to put a porn shop in there because it makes less money than the kitchen shop. He was a businessman. At nothing else, I wanted to appeal to that. Now, in the end, he put the gourmet kitchen store in there. And we went there as often as we could afford to. It really had pretty expensive things. But bottom line is, I don't take credit. Like, if I didn't pray that, it wouldn't have happened. But it was cool for me to have partnered what I believe to be the heart of God. He wants to bless people. He doesn't want to kill that guy and his family. He didn't want to bring disease on them. Now, the enemy did, yeah, but I wanted to pray blessing on what some people would consider my enemy. And that's how we do it. That's how we do it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. We'll be back again next week on The Epic Narrative.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
All right, some Bob Thoughts coming your way. Yeah, we covered a lot there. And it's, as far as my theology goes, that probably is one of the most heavy episodes we've done, because we dealt with dualism. I just got asked this literally 3 days ago from somebody who I haven't necessarily spoken to for a while, but they made contact. They started listening to the podcast, and they asked me that question: Are you a dualist? And I was like, wow. Now, granted, they're theologically, they have a vocabulary that would put that question into their hearts, but most everyday people don't even consider themselves a dualist, because they just believe that God is both. He does bad things for good reasons, basically, and they don't understand it, and that's okay, because their preacher said they're not supposed to always understand it. They're just supposed to show up at church every Sunday and serve the Lord. So that's what they do, and they're happy. And I was too for a lot of years. Anyways, so we dealt with dualism. We dealt with the beautiful song that was written that also made God a murderer. And again, was it in the Bible? Absolutely. Did Moses write it? Yes. That's the way the people chose to see him. And you get what you have faith for. So that's the way the people saw him. You buy a red car, you're going to see more red cars. If you make God a murderer, you're going to see him killing people all over the place. So crazy but true. And then we end with the water story. And I love the water story. I really do. I just think that whole stick situation, like, we just make life so much more complicated than we need to, because we think the way that people have told us to think, which is that we are worms, we are unworthy, we are slaves that just need to beg the master to not kill us. But the reality is we are sons of God, and we have such authority and power that we can step into and really rock this world. All of creation cries out for the sons of God to behave like what they are. We've got to keep stretching ourselves. I know it's scary. You can do it. I believe in you, because I know who your dad is. So step out, get crazy. What other thoughts do I have? You guys are awesome. Thanks for your love and support. If you want to financially support, there's links available both here in the description of the episodes, as well as our website and my Facebook page and my Instagram page, I think. Hey, and if you do TikTok, give me a follow on TikTok. A lot of the thoughts I have on theology, I try and do in 60 seconds on TikTok, and at least make people think. So, yeah, give me a follow. Let's push the algorithms. I don't care if the Chinese people are reading all of them or listening to them all. I kind of hope they are. I think it'll be funny. I think they'll have a good time. Yeah, I'm also not worried that they know everything about me. People have been tracking our phones, since they were invented. Long before they were invented, they knew how to do it. They've been watching us, listening to us. And Bob, are you a conspiracy theorist? No, but I do not just believe what I'm told. I read and I research. You guys know that about me. I read, I research, and I try to stay independent. I actually don't think I know for sure I have not watched any mainstream media, for at least 10 years. It's been longer than that, I think. I actually did a fast. I was into it, like wicked into it, back in my Connecticut days. And I did a 30-day fast of no media. And when I just worshiped. Anytime I wanted to watch the news, watch sports, like anything, I would just listen to worship. And man, it revolutionized It was revolutionary. And I never went back to the news. I did go back to sports, which is also getting annoying, and the way that they're pushing everything. But currently I can ignore it still. But yeah, I haven't listened to them in forever. I do read extensively, and I do listen to you don't need to know all this. Anyways, I encourage you, think and behave like a child of God, not a slave of a master. All right, you guys are awesome. Have a great day, and I'll see you next week on the Epic Narrative.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.